Hello, everyone. How are we doing? What's up, Mr. Ellis Dean? There's Vince. I am 2 shows into my season 3. And boy, we are talking about a good one tonight. Well, today, rather. What's up, Thomas? We're talking about the world of cannabis. And I see my guest is on, all cleanly shaved. Indeed, folks. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to Soapbox Sunday with Jermaine Taylor. I'm always grateful that you choose to share just a portion of your afternoon with me. I don't take it lightly. I don't take it for granted. Social media is saturated and I'm just a drop in the bucket. But guess what? I'm a big splash. In my opinion, I am. So how was your week, guys? Everybody's good? I'm feeling really good today. I'm going to try to expand my repertoire this season. I'm going to tackle some subjects that are really foreign to me. I feel like when I'm challenged, I can challenge you guys, and it makes for a more compelling conversation. So yeah, we are talking about cannabis today. Woo! See the shirt? Indeed. So, what's going on with you this week, Thomas? You still hiking? I know, essential Sunday viewing. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Folks are trickling in here as normal and standard. Excuse me. A lot of my people watch my broadcasts throughout the week, and I get all these comments about, oh my God, how much they've learned and how much they were exposed to different, ideas and, perspectives about things that they knew about, but they didn't know particularly that particular thing about it. Hello, guys. My realtor, my candidate. Hey, what's up, Donna? There she is. Donna's my front row audience member. She is. I'm going to put Donna on the staff. She doesn't know it yet, but she's going to be on the staff. I know it's really hot in California. Oh, my God. Unseasonably warm. Well, I was out in it yesterday, and I was like, am I about to swelter? I see you guys jumping on in here. Thank you so much. Tell you, every time I see a new person and the numbers in my viewership gets higher and higher, just encourages me to keep going. So I really appreciate that. Oh, wow. You're driving to Houston. Yay. All righty. Folks, welcome to Soapbox Sunday. I am Jermaine Taylor. This is going to be a really, really informative, good show today, folks. Remember when we used to speak of marijuana in a hushed whisper or even behind closed doors for fear of losing our liberties or the social stigma? That wasn't long ago. I remember that period when we just didn't speak openly about cannabis. I'm in awe of the accelerated acceptance of cannabis in our culture today. In short, to me, it demonstrates what the power of education can do for society. Today, we have Derrick Dudley, an entrepreneur and expert in the field of cannabis. Now, when I asked this brother if he was interested in joining me for this conversation, he responded, "Only if my audience will enjoy the seemingly random thoughts of an angry old black man." Well, that's character enough for me. I was like, come on, hop on. Let's talk about it. So, folks, round of applause out there in Instagram Live land, and welcome Derrick Dudley to Soapbox Sunday. Hold on, guys. He is hopping on. Hey, guys, I see you in there. Oh, indeed. Yes, indeed, folks. Give him a couple of seconds here. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time for people to hop on Instagram Live. But he is jumping on here, Mr. Derrick Dudley. There he is. What's
there
up,
we are.
What's
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Everyone, this is Derrick Dudley, an entrepreneur and expert in the field of cannabis. How are you doing this afternoon, rather, man?
I'm doing great. I use the term expert very lightly because there is eons and eons of information that existed before me. And I'm really just truly learning and scratching the surface of what's out there. in all
Derrick, I think
facets and
you're
all
selling
degrees.
yourself a little short, man, because you were dropping some bombs on me the other day during our pre-production conversation. And I was like, wait a minute, this fella, I'm going to have to like up my game and my research because I like to pretty much know what I'm talking about when I have these conversations. So once again, man, thank you so much for jumping on Soapbox Sunday. I really appreciate it. This is not long.
No problem.
So let's just talk about the beginnings of it. We know that cannabis, the marijuana plant, came from the Asian culture, the Indian cultures, and it was predominantly used as a medicinal, as a spiritual practice, holistic practices. How did we like co-opt it when it got over here and all of a sudden it became this taboo and this stigmatized, plant when its origins were steeped in nothing but positivity and healing? How did that happen?
The short answer is colonialism and crony capitalism. That's probably the shortest, sweetest answer. If I expound on that, we want to bear in mind that several cultures, indigenous cultures, have used this plant as part of ritual or healings for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And even into the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were, if I'm not mistaken, according to the pot book, 600 different patents from pharmaceutical companies, including Eli Lilly and Park Davis. We're talking some of the bigger names in pharmaceutical who had formulations in anything from, sickness to sleep. And it's interesting that it was actually the Rockefellers and the Carnegies who started and initiated the fight against the broadening of acceptance of cannabis. And it wasn't about the medicinal or psychoactive properties, but more so of the potential to displace certain industries that they had tied to because of hemp. And if we look at some of the earlier, the framers of the Constitution even wanted hemp predominantly placed because they knew the value of it as a material. So you fast forward through the industrial revolutions and the captains of the industry, and then finally in the 30s, if you have a chance, there's a great documentary hosted by Fab Five Freddy. Trying to think of the name of it on Netflix. Grass is Greener. Just had to look at my quick note.
Yes, indeed.
And then it highlights the administration of the Hoover administration and how he utilized the Carnegie and the Carnegie and Rockefeller research to initiate the crusade and utilize misunderstandings about the plant to criminalize brown people, Mexicans, Black people.
So did they see that it was healing, and did they see where a lot of people were benefiting from it, and they just wanted to kind of wedge and sort of set them back? Like, what was the whole reason behind that? Because I don't understand why all of a sudden you would take this herb that was pretty much bettering society, and all of a sudden when it gets over here, you use this out of all things to use it against us, divide us, criminalize us. Like, what was the goal of that? Control?
It's you know what, and I hate to say things that are just in my own head or conspiracy theory, but when I think about it, even of myself, the more and more I learn about the plant, the more and more I learn about, if you think about the research, the actual medicinal research and where it came from, a lot of our research comes from Israel, one of the US's biggest trading partners. So it's been funded by the US government. There are patents for medicinal use within our own government. I can't help but feel like, yes, it's a concerted effort and a conspiracy to, at the end of the day, control wealth. Because what we did see happen is that because of the US's prohibition, the global cascade with respect to being able to do business and banking, prompted other governments to take similar stances, even to the point where it was known that, hey, there are local economies that are being supported by underground cultivation of this plant. And
Wow.
yet it's well known that, I'll give you a prime example. If you look at the statistics in West Africa, it's amazing to know that, you're talking about a country that's one of the top 2 or 3 consumers of recreational cannabis,
Right.
in light of its being prohibited. Morocco, another African country, that's the world's biggest hashish producer, yet and still, because of how the governments are intermingled and have to move money around.
Yeah.
And I see a comment, I don't even want to get into the plight of the black farmer.
No, indeed.
That's an
Thank you, Joy.
entirely different discussion. That's when the smile goes to my face, to them effers again. Here they go. They did it to Australia. They did
Leave
it to
it
the
to Joy
U.S.
Stevens to instigate some shit on Soapbox Sunday, but we love her to
Wipe
death.
out the indigenous, take their lands, and
Yeah.
find a way to take a free resource and
Yeah.
turn it into a financial opportunity. So what we've seen even in the legalization
Yes.
of cannabinoids, I'll give you a prime example. California is very well followed and studied.
Yes.
I'm in Florida. Well, I'm based out of Florida. I'm actually in Canada now. I'm originally from Florida, and I'll give you a prime example. There were 17 original licenses given out, and you want to talk about what a lottery looks like? A lottery looks like a selected, calculated, politically friendly entity able to acquire a license for $60,000 or so, and then flip it to an out-of-state capitalized firm for $55 million. Now you imagine how that changes the trajectory of what that family can do generationally.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in that same state, you can look it up, Pickford cases, and essentially there was a carve out to try to get at least one black farmer the opportunity to participate in this lottery. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine, you take someone who's the descendant of a sharecropper. You give me $60,000 to get a license. Where's my opportunity to flip that $60,000 for the $55 million payout? And so we've seen that play out over and over again across every legalized states.
Yeah.
When you look into Illinois and see the number of equity awards that were given to equity applicants being less than, I think it was originally like less than 10% of the applicants. The very population that was supposed to be awarded licensing, only 10% of the population received that. And so what we've seen is basically a way to use legalization to further consolidate wealth and give certain folks a head start.
There is an economy to keeping people poor. There is, when people get rich, it's only at the expense of people staying, generationally poor. And that's pretty much what you're speaking power to. The whole myth of it being a gateway drug, is that pretty much in terms of a personality issue? Like if somebody gets this high from cannabis and they realize that high isn't doing anything from them, so they migrate to something a little bit stronger. Can we honestly say that it is a gateway myth? Or is it just something that they just use to further stigmatize the use of it? Where did it even come from?
It came from, I'm born in 1978, 80s babies, drug abuse resistance education. The Reagan administration. Just say no. This is your brain on drugs.
Yeah.
Gateway was not a phrase until the Reagan administration, and even chemically, even by the U.S.'s own research. And there's an excellent resource, National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. They put out an evidence summary and report that qualifies certain conditions, but when you look at the dependability tolerance of certain recreational drugs, 8 to 10% chance of long-term quote-unquote addiction with cannabinoids, which ranks much less than your favorite can of diet soda.
Exactly. Yeah.
The reality is it is definitely not a gateway. The gateway to hard drugs is trauma.
Yeah. Oh,
And that's
and that's a
the
whole new different
irony.
show.
Yeah, it's a different show, and the
Yeah.
irony of this plan, and there are some definitely there are some experts that I've had a chance of interacting with after being on Clubhouse, and even some of their own physicians that I came in contact, in my work as a cannabis sales representative in the medical space.
Mm-hmm.
The irony of how we have been beat with this plant, it could be our savior at the same time when we start
Yeah.
to understand neurotransmitters, and how our brain behaves as a result of trauma. And in talking to psychiatrists, trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
And the breakthrough is through endocannabinoid system signaling.
You just got this beautiful compliment from Joy. She says she's known you 15 years and she's never known you to be so passionate.
I
We are
appreciate it. I don't
beneficiaries
know
of
how
your
to.
passionate.
I would like to think that I've been that passionate about other things.
You
But
are. You are speaking so much truth there, and even your facial expressions are just saying.
You know what? I have to say, my journey and what I've learned is that everybody's view of this plant is different. And so you're going to have so many different views and conversations, and everybody has their own stake and idea and what their view. And so the way I came into it, outside of my years as trying to find a little bag on the corner just to alleviate whatever I thought was going on in my head, I was a
and this was a
pharmaceutical
mental traumatic thing you were trying to address. It.
You know what? At the time, let's be real. Most of
Mm-hmm.
our introduction to cannabis was, through a friend, sharing a joint, sharing some good times and some laughing. And what we aren't taught in school, and even your doctor isn't taught about the endocannabinoid system and how your body wants homeostasis, and even your neurotransmitters. Everything up here is trying to work in concert and in harmony to have a holistic outcome.
As a way of keeping you settled, is that what you're saying? Keeping you settled, keeping you somewhat tempered?
I would say not only keeping mental temperance, but also metabolism.
Okay.
Sleep. As a matter of fact, I spoke
so
with
just
the
for
sleep.
a better quality of life is what you're saying. What people are going after it for is what you're pretty much
saying. It's
okay.
what we would probably refer to as well-being, and we have been so conditioned to not being well that to get to the baseline of well is deemed getting high. Speaking with clinicians, we are taught that getting high and euphoria is a side effect. But what if euphoria is actually a desired outcome for a depressed patient or someone whose serotonin is either under production or not being received at the other end, where
or
that
just the
receptor site
everyday
is available.
citizen, because I strive for euphoria just about every day in my life. I want that moment where everything is like, oh.
So why is euphoria a bad word? Why are we associating euphoria with a negative outcome? So that being said, this plant has the ability and from a nutritional standpoint, it's one of the most nutrient dense substances you can, between the moringa leaf and the cannabis leaf, you're pretty much getting all your nutrients, and you add in a little Irish moss, but I don't want to go off on
a moment today, Dudley. You're dropping a moment. So let's today, who is pretty much spearheading the crusade against the social acceptance of it? Is it the religious right, or is it these lobbyists whose politicians are in their pocket? Like, who is pretty much beating that narrative in certain pockets of the country that we live in? Because Colorado, out here in California, where I am, it's acceptable. The economy is booming as a result of what's going on. I can't drive 500 feet down the street and not see a dispensary, and it's adding to, the benefit and the growth of the economy out here in California. And I'm assuming it's doing it for the same other state in Colorado and other states. But who is beating that drum against a countrywide social acceptance? Is it the religious right or what?
So I am starting to see more pastors, and I'm talking about Black pastors, come out in in defense of the plant, understanding not only the economic opportunity. You know, we're coming out of that phase of old time religion. We're starting to ask more questions. We're starting we're starting to want our churches to do more. I remember being in a church and having a pastor say, you know what, let's stop being a bougie black church in the heart of the ghetto that doesn't do anything for anybody. Let's get out there and mingle. And let's face it, the reality is, there are a lot of things that are taboo just for the sake of it being taboo and what was taught to us traditionally. But the education was not part of our coming up. The way I was introduced to cannabis was that the penalty for enjoying it was more harsh than the consequences that come with actually consuming it. So why is that? So now we're starting to see, once I saw Amazon say, wait a minute, we should stop testing our employees. We know that the businesses are starting to get in to make moves. And if you really want to get your foresight on, look at UN sustainability for 2030, when all of these companies are supposedly doing away with plastic. So while we're chasing our opportunity to get a hold of THC, and I'm not saying it's not important, listen to your corner and watch for the hook. Word to Cool Breeze. Keep your eye on the hemp-based opportunity. Pardon?
Do you think that's where corporations are moving towards not necessarily drug testing their employees? Because when I saw that Amazon was not going to drug test their employees for, you know, marijuana use, I was like, whoa, that's a game changer. That signifies a big shift in our culture. So, and we always want to listen and we follow the money. So do you think we're going to like line up behind them now, or will there still be that it's still something that we shouldn't be doing and it's going to lead to this, and they want to like pretty much piggyback it on with this opioid addiction? They're two separate worlds.
Not only is it two separate worlds, but, you know, and one thing I want to make note of is that the money that is made from pharmaceutical completely dwarfs the money that is being made in cannabis. You know, when you look at the top healthcare companies, they're making so much money that the cannabis conversation is rather inconsequential to a large degree. Wow. A lot of that probably has to do with who's paying for it. Cannabis, even if you're in a state, you're paying out of pocket. When you have a prescription pharmaceutical that's on a formulary, now you're talking of something that has a payer. And so until pharmaceutical companies have somebody who's guaranteed to pay for what they put out, they're not going to dive wholly in. That being said, you know, GW Pharma is a company out of the UK. They operate in the US as Greenwich Sciences, which allows them to sell their FDA approved real live cannabinoid for about $30,000 per patient per year for something that can be produced in my backyard for pennies on the dollar. Yeah. So, you know, what I do think we'll see is like synthetic copies of things that are discovered with the plant. Like, for example, CBN. It's what happens when, you know, we call it sleepy weed. It's what THC converts. It gets old, it oxidizes, converts to CBN, and that stuff is better than any Ambien, Lunesta.
Joy just mentioned it replaces so many prescriptions, the use of cannabis.
So there's I was working with the company that was part of a study, and I don't like to shout the company out because fuck them.
And we won't.
Sorry. but if you go on my LinkedIn profile, you can see who I've worked for in the cannabis space. Okay. So that being said, one of the things that was in the study was a medication reduction of 60%. And the clinicians that had been using this and eyeballed it said, yeah, I could see this easily, meaning reducing polypharmacy. So, for example, you're talking about a patient that suffers from depression, anxiety, pain, and now insomnia. So now they are on an antidepressant. They're probably on something to boost their epinephrine. Then there's pain management. Tramadol is the gateway to the OxyContin. And just to bear in mind that it's your opiate receptors that have the ability to shut your life down when they get overloaded, as opposed to your cannabinoid receptors, which are not present in the brainstem. So I love the fact that cannabis has killed the same number of people that unicorns have gorged in 2021.
So is hemp their way of giving us an olive branch, those that use it, because hemp is widely legal? Is that their way of saying, listen, take this a little bit, and while we're working on the advancement, because you have to know that scientists in big pharma, they understand all that scientific knowledge you just dropped, they have it. But at the same time, they only make money when they have these other prescriptions that they are just shelling out on all these people. So is hemp the offer in compromise?
I would like to think so, but to a point that was made earlier, you still have to have land to have hemp.
You do. Yeah.
And and it's a shame when, what I asked my family, like I've I'm from Tallahassee, Florida. Tallahassee prior to FAMU was a plantation. So when I think about, sharecropping and all the land that is supposed to be within members of these black churches that I were meant to, and it's the same story state to state. How much land is left in the family? Oh, we have about an acre. 1 acre out of if I multiply the 40 acres and the mules across the descendants of Neil and Netta Floyd, we're supposed to have more than 1 acre.
Well, we never got the 40 acres in the mules to begin with. So
the other issue with the hemp, and don't get me wrong, I'm an advocate and I still see lanes and opportunities. We just have to understand. And I would my bit of advice to anyone who is the least bit interested in how to participate in the industry is, number one, talk to a farmer, understand what they're going through currently in existing. Number two, tap into a network just to understand what's being done, who's doing what, good, bad, or ugly, what ideas are being shared. Yeah. And what we learned in the first round or run with hemp is that, yes, you can go out and cultivate it, but somebody has to process it. Meanwhile, they've been doing this in Europe and in China for a long time. So it's ironic. I can go look at my grow tent and yes, I'm in Canada and I can grow all the weed I want to as long as I keep it under 4 plants. Sure. But every resource utilized to bring that plant to life was made in China. Yeah. The vertical technology, the lighting technology comes from either China or Europe. So there are places that have really been doing industrial hemp ahead of us. So we're a little bit behind. And so
by the time it even gets to us, like if I go buy it at like not some dispensary, even at some, off the beaten path pharmacy, and, it's always so diluted. You're never getting the full effects of it because by the time it makes it to the shelf, I don't think you're really getting the full power that, hemp can actually do as far as a therapeutic in a salve, if you will. So I don't know if the hemp that we're talking about, we have access to, the ones that you're actually just describing.
So what I would say is that what we do have are certificates of analysis. Mm-hmm. And these certificates of analysis are the closest thing we have to standardizing and proving the integrity and efficacy of the product that you're buying. Mm-hmm. So if you are not asking for a certificate of analysis, buyer beware. Yeah. At the end of the day, what they do have that we need to catch up with is the processing capability. For example, I was at a
I was keep spitting them out here, and every time I read one of her comments, I want to laugh.
You know what? I would argue, and so here's I will address that comment in a moment.
She said the weed in America is whack, says the Jamaican. I don't really know about that, girl.
Well, put it like this: there's people who consume as part of a lifestyle, and for sacrament. Sure. And so the way they receive and their receptor sites might be a little bit different. They grow under guerrilla growing conditions over there. So they do the most with less.
So do you get a tolerance for it? Like if for long-term use, do you build up a tolerance and you want something a little bit stronger after a while? Or do you just jump to something all completely different as just a way of keeping it fresh? Like, what is the natural progression?
So that's an excellent question because I'm going through the natural progression as we speak. Okay. And here's what I mean by that. And the answer to your question is yes, you do build a tolerance to THC. Okay. Here's the good news. you can wash that out after 30 days. So a clinician,
you go cold turkey, or you just like try, like, how do you wash it out? Like, what is that process? Just not smoking anything?
stop smoking.
Now, that's a hard thing to do.
So what's interesting is that what we don't have with THC is a chemical dependency.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to other agents that people add and will build. We don't see the same. We do build a tolerance, but we don't see the chemical dependency. Therefore, we don't have the physical craving and reaction. I might miss what it's doing for my neurotransmitters.
Fix. Yeah, exactly.
I might miss that.
Yeah.
But that being said, I in talking with more people and learning more and more, we're really not supposed to be burning this anyway. Like I can't remember the last time I went to the supermarket and picked up a broccoli and said, I'm going to smoke the shit out of this. These are nutritious plants, and we would actually do well to do more juicing, more raw cannabis. I promise you, I found out on a flub, my cognition improved after I had a plant that I was growing, and it hermied, which is the term for a female plant that got cross-pollinated by a male. So I ended up with seeds and flowers. So I ate both. So now I'm getting omega-3 fatty acids, and I'm getting THCA, which is the unburned version of THC, the acidic version, and in and of its natural form. And we're just starting to learn that there are more benefits to THC, including neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is what happens when you get a thump on the head, and now you have a protein that's sitting there because of the trauma and the body's inability to process what happens, excess glutamate. So now it's killing neurons. So neuroplasticity is the brain saying, hey, whatever was going on here, we need to find a new route.
Yeah.
THC breeds neuroplasticity.
Now let's talk about strands real quick, because there's sativa, there's hybrid, there's indica. In short, what are the differences between those three? We know that the hybrid is a cross-pollination of both sativa and the indica. What does the sativa do to your body or your brain as opposed to the indica?
So I'm going to 103,000% oversimplify this.
Please do.
So by and large, the nomenclature has been misused. The plant in and of it general, as we consume it, is a cannabis sativa plant. Okay. The indica assignment was given to shorter, broader plants, more from Asian mountainous regions, high trichome production. Trichomes are the little crystals that pop up that basically hold all the THC that get you high. So the I guess probably the normalized term for indica is in the couch lock. It's relaxing. Sativas are longer and thinner in their structure, shorter time to
more of a head
maturity.
High sativa, or is it a body high?
And I'm going to get into this in just a moment because I stay away from those terms, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
I try to stick to just the physical appearance of the plant, and so the sativas is the long skin. Yeah. So and this is, and it's funny because I've seen doctors give this talk, and I said, Doc, why did you say it like that, knowing that it's not the right term? And she said, because when I do give the right term, it goes everybody's head.
Exactly.
I said, you know what, man, everybody, if you're watching this on the phone, you got Google. So if I go over your head, you can catch up. And it's and the reality, what we're really talking about is the terpenes. That's what determines the outcome and the effects that you're going to feel from your consumption for the most part. Mm-hmm. That being said, I'd be lying if I told you that I've identified, which plant type has a propensity to have more of a certain type of terpene. What I will say is that the indica versus sativa is really more so about the appearance and the geographic origin of the plant as opposed to the outcome. Now, I will say, that being said, again, the indica, because of how it grows, it may produce more THC trichomes over its life,
And what does
ending
that
up
do for
with
your
a
body?
body high.
Oh, a body high. Okay.
The longer you let a plant mature, the longer you're basically looking for a body high. A plant that is harvested early is gonna be more of a heady, energetic high. But the true measurement of, or I would say predictor of the outcome, is based in something called terpenes. And terpenes are something that every plant has, and largely they are the plant's defense system. And it's interesting that these plants' defense systems also have therapeutic benefit for humans.
Woo, boy, you are entirely scientific on Soapbox Hunter today.
My
This
bad,
is a
my
new
bad.
level.
My
Oh
bad,
no, I'm
my bad.
enjoying it. I am. This is amazing. And I'm like, I guess the next time I even approach my vape pen, I'm going to think about it differently as a result of what you're saying today. Now, let's talk about the more pop culture aspects of it today. Remember the 70s when you had all the Cheech and Chong movies and it was about how big the joint can get and stuff like that? Did that somewhat begin the process of normalizing its use, or did it do the whole cannabis industry a disservice?
I would say that, so let's call myself a little bit younger, and I'm going to point to a movie like How High or Half Baked. It's in that same line of, friendly, light-hearted comedies about cannabis. This isn't so bad.
But that's how you move the culture forward. When you put
I think it does. I think it does, because I when I walk into a boardroom, the same people who have the power and the control grew up influenced by those movies, and so now it's not so threatening.
Right.
So I think those movies definitely have their place, and they did their thing. And it's interesting because there's a lot of talk about, co-opted movements and how people feel about celebrities getting involved in the cannabis industry. And, Cheech and Chong definitely have a pass.
I feel like, and I feel like that's just a way forward. We're highly influenced by people that we idolized. So when you hear people like Willie Nelson or Seth Rogen or, Jay-Z getting in the game, it somewhat settles, some of the anxieties or some of the impediments that we have mentally about it. So I'm here for it, but at the same time, there's always going to be this push against it. So I feel like that's both the yin and the yang of it. Let's talk about edibles real quick. So from this conversation, I'm thinking that you're not a big fan of them. Am I right?
Oh, I'm a huge fan of edibles, especially,
really?
having come from the dentist, and the dentist told me that, hey, once we do your operation, you're going to have to stop smoking. I was like, you might as well, told me to go ahead and write my will and check out. I don't want to live like that.
Do you feel like it's getting out of hand?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Who am I to tell you what's right for your endocannabinoid system, or who am I to tell you what's right for your healing? And what people might want to know, especially US based, to understand about how cannabis has been approached in Canada. The original argument in Canada centered around the patient's right to access medicine. So it's interesting because when I look at the conflicting FDA versus DEA rulings, it's Schedule 1, but yet it obviously has a benefit. Here in Canada, it was a completely different argument. And the legacy patients, they've moved on from just getting a dime bag on the corner. They have,
well, they're going into the stores to purchase it now for the most part.
If they haven't already identified specific strains that they themselves can cultivate, or
are there a lot of people growing their own weed? Are you telling me that?
Why not?
I mean, it takes such a controlled setup to do it, and it's a lot of time.
I want to answer your question about edibles, but it's called weed for a reason. You can take a seed and flick it and come back to it, and it's going to do what it's going to do. Now, you can optimize it by providing the right environment, but at the end of the day, it's a seed. You throw it in the soil or even in water.
I
And
saw some edible gummy bears, and it just freaking my mind was blown. I was like, how the hell did they make that happen?
first
And
of all, I got to shout out my boy Boo Berry, Eddie Boo Williams, University of Arkansas.
Is he on here?
Alum, I don't know if he is, but I always want to make sure I shout out somebody from Tallahassee, Florida, who is involved in the cannabis industry. He line of gummy bears, and gummy bears is, you know, even before, you know, legalization, is like the first thing that you really learn that you can infuse. After there's a certain progression that says, okay, you know, there's the flour, then I'm going to turn it into butter, or I'm going to turn it into oil. And to your point about earlier about, you know, whether the efficacy of what you're getting is there, a lot of what is being sold and marketed is an isolate, meaning that they have stripped the plant down to essentially the equivalent of a synthetic version. Now, it's a lock and key system, so it's still going to come into the body, and it's CBD and THC are messengers. The difference between these messengers and normal neurotransmitters is that these other neurotransmitters only travel in one direction, but cannabinoids, they can kind of move about. So they have a regulatory mission and function within our bodies. So yes, you are getting CBD. However, the plant in of itself, as I mentioned, it has terpenes, something called phytols, which is anti-inflammatory. So when you get an extracted product, you're getting either something that is completely stripped down, or you're getting something that is referred to as broad, full, or whole spectrum. And so the stripped down version is cheap as crap to make. And that's why the marketing story behind the cheapest crap, it's pure in its form and it's pharmaceutical. Yeah, but it also doesn't provide the complement of agents that are supposed to be a part of the whole picture.
And
as far as
the side effects of it are they're kind of strong, because I remember once when I actually had something, I'm not going to tell you what it was, and I was like, this is a feeling that I've never gotten before. So I don't know how the process was that led to it, but it didn't feel like some solid shit, if you will.
I can imagine, and I know that there's something out there, and I might, you know, upset some people, but I know that, you know, Delta 8 is floating around, and it is and let me just be clear, I am not 100% against Delta 8. What I am for is the standardization of it. So Delta 8 is the response to the prohibition of Delta 9. So when they've said THC is banned, they're talking about Delta 9. So people got crafty and said, you know what, let's synthesize this CBD and we'll make it so that it hits these receptor sites and gives us something like that feeling that we want. But since it's not Delta 9, it's legal. But the problem is the process. And because the process is unregulated, there are some consequences that can happen from
such as side effects that you just have no idea
that are unaccounted for. Like I didn't even hear of, like in Canada, we legalized the whole plant, so we have no need for Delta 8. But I want to make clear my stance on edibles. I think edibles are great. I think people don't know how to follow directions. So if you've had this my first edible story, you are not alone. My first edibles. Only take a quarter.
The menu is way too vast. I mean, you can find anything and infuse it with cannabis. And I'm ain't it great? How did you do it? You know? And it's like,
wait till you realize you can grind it up and now it's pepper.
Oh my God.
You can hide that stuff in anywhere.
Are you going to open up a cafe anytime soon?
No, there are plenty of geniuses already opening cafes. I think
there's one out here. Yeah, there's one out here, and it's on my bucket list. I haven't been yet, but you know, sometimes I'm very lightweight when it comes to my use, if you will. So it's often modified and very short. Let's talk about, we got to drive this train on because Instagram Live only gives us a good hour, 55 minutes. Cannabis and medicine. Do we know it to be a cure, or is it a temporary fix, or is it more of a band-aid? What has it been scientifically proven to do as far as disease addressing, control? Is it a fix? Is it a cure? Or is it just more so a band-aid for the time being until your body heals? Where is cannabis in medicine?
So I'm going to give a name by the name of Ethan Russo.
Okay.
And he is a U.S. neurologist. And his papers and what's been vetted even by the scientists and clinicians that have come after have noted that what a lot of diseases are, they are manifestations of dysregulation of the endocannabinoid system. So the endocannabinoid system wants it plays this governance role and wants to maintain homeostasis. But if there's dysregulation in the signaling, you're going to have migraines, you're going to have irritable bowel, you're going to have fibromyalgia. So what the plant in and of itself does, the phytocannabinoids, because we have internal creation of cannabinoids. These phytocannabinoids come from the plant. And ultimately, they want to shore up the deficiencies in this dysregulation. So to answer your question about whether it's going to cure a dysregulation or a problem, it's not a cure, but it's not quite, it's definitely more than a Band-Aid. Okay. Because each one of our endocannabinoid systems are different. Someone who suffers from, I want to say I met a group of, it was a group of celiac patients. The way they have to ingest cannabis for it to work is completely different than how I ingest for it to work.
So is it more vaping for them? Like, how do they ingest it? These patients?
Dry herb vaping, and even eating the cannabis raw, because apparently the oil changes how it's digested and it passes right through. And it's interesting because I see the brother. Shout out to a Nurse's Root, Tennessee. Hemp Band took the cannabinoids out of our diet. We had this conversation. We were talking about, why am I setting this on fire? This is a dietary supplement chock full of nutrients.
So how did that even come about, us even lighting a joint and passing it around? Like, where did that even come from?
I don't know, because the first time I was introduced to cannabis, just like most of the people I know,
it was a roll joint that you passed it around. Yeah, so,
it was probably one of my wife's friends from Hawaii who said, "Well, we actually eat it before a test."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no doubt. Wow. Any unconventional uses that are out there that we don't know of that you could possibly make my audience privy to? Like, what are some of the lesser known uses of cannabis that we would like to know as a bit of trivia to button this conversation up?
You know what? Anytime you talk about suppositories, that's always
really,
who doesn't love a suppository or two? But for patients who have, difficulty ingesting it in other ways, there's enough blood vessels down there to get rapid relief.
Donna out of Houston said we're going to need a part 2 of this episode, so I think you're going to have to come back, Mr. Derrick Dudley. Seriously, you are dropping some knowledge, and I don't even have half my questions asked yet. And this has been a great conversation. Oh my God. You got some things popping for next year that you mentioned, right? Like what you got going for your own particular entrepreneurship in this particular industry.
And this is going to tie in along the point of suppositories. I do have to shout out Pleasure Peaks and Antoinette Gomez. This is a female-focused brand for women who suffer from pelvic pain.
Exactly.
And you walk into a clinic and, it's funny. I can walk into a multidisciplinary clinic and all the doctors say, "Hey, cannabis guy, get out of here."
Yeah.
And then the physiotherapist in the back, "Hey, before you go, let me talk to you." Or the naturopathic doctor in the back, "Hey, before you go, can I talk to you?"
I have a good friend who suffers with menstrual cramps, and that's what she resorts to get herself through that. And it's a monthly thing for her. And that's the only thing that somewhat settles her pain is the use of cannabis. Now, I don't know how she ingests it or the method that she used to get it in her body, but her menstrual cramps are every month. That's the only time she ever uses it, because it pretty much just settles everything that she's going through. And she went through some very aggressive stuff. So yeah, I did know about that. And it actually just came to mind. And I held the suppository thing. Wow. Do they like make a pill? Or like
Capsule.
A capsule?
Capsule,
Jeez.
dissolvable. I would also say wound care.
I knew that.
If you look up, there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Vincent Maida. He's got, when it comes to wound healing, venous leg ulcers, diabetic ulcers. And
that's a rapid healing too, Derrick. It doesn't take long, because I've actually done that myself. When you put a cannabis salve on any kind of thing, it heals so much quicker. There's no scarring. Your skin is made perfect again. So
I want to introduce a terpene called carophyllene. So carophyllene is one of the terpenes that are in these salves that help the THC and CBD cross the barriers with more acceptance. As far as what I'm working on and what I have going on, it's funny. I've worked for 2 licensed cannabis companies in Canada, and I made up my mind. I said, I am tired of working for middle-aged white men who have never taken the seed out of a dime bag. That life is over for me. And a week later, a gentleman called and said, "Hey, do you believe in God?" I said, "Uh-oh, is this a Nigerian scam artist?" And it turned out to be a brother with a vision to connect the farming needs, both here in the U.S. with our brothers and sisters over in Africa. So I have partnered with him in founding African Farmers Online and Agro Services. Our first venture is the commercial launch of an organic biostimulant. So you want to talk about, if you want to talk about a gateway, cannabis can be a gateway to learning more about plant science, material science, vertical farming, because that's an entirely different conversation that needs to take place, which is food security in food deserts. And there's a plan for that.
You are getting ready to take over the world, my brother. And I'm glad to have this conversation with you at the inception of it. Derrick Dudley, man, when I tell you this has been one of my more informative conversations, and I had no idea. I mean, I had a framework of what I wanted to touch base on, but talk about sagging. Jesus, this was amazing, man. Congratulations to you.
Appreciate it.
You will be coming back as soon as you have time, as soon as we can make space for you.
Oh, thanks.
Because this right here, we only scratched the surface of what, like I said earlier in my introduction, it demonstrates what the power of education can do for a society. Once you know about the interworkings of it, the truth of it, you approach it a lot differently. The stigma erodes, you know what I'm saying? So you have done a service in getting the real message of cannabis out there today on my platform. And I really appreciate you for jumping on the soapbox today. I really do. And let me know when you're up and running so I can blast you, because I got a big mouth and I don't mind pushing people that are trying to do their own thing.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Derrick Dudley. You have a great Sunday. And again, thanks a lot, and we'll chat soon.
All right. Thank you.
Folks, thank you for jumping on the soapbox today. It was a little heavy and scientific meeting, but we got there, and it was an amazing conversation. Next week is a Soapbox Sunday exclusive. I have one of the more dynamic emerging voices in political commentary jumping on, Miss Reese Colbert, and I would that you join me next week. Have a good week, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.